Hey guys, I'm Kathryn. I'm a data scientist here at SAS, and today I'm excited to show you all about summarizing your data using date variables and date formats. One of the tasks that I do regularly with my data is summarize it on a monthly basis. I focus on healthcare data, so this might look like answering questions like, how many patients does a doctor see every month? And so we calculate that total number based on all the claims in our data. For you, today in our video, we're going to create a sample data set where we look at a series of transactions. Think of this like your credit card or debit card purchases that you made for a couple of months this year. So we're going to create that fake data set, and then we're going to focus on a couple of approaches on how you can summarize the data and answer the question, how much money did I spend every month? So let's dive in. Okay, so before we really get into the fake data of all of your transactions, I do want to cover a couple of quick basics. The first being, what is a SAS date? And that is, a SAS date is just the number of days since January 1st, 1960. If your date comes before January 1st, 1960, it's a negative number. And if it comes after January 1st, 1960, it'll show up in your data as a positive number. And so I want to give an example on screen really quick of just what does this look like in SAS when you're looking at a data set. So here I've got an example program where we're just creating my start date, and this is the day that I started at SAS, which is February 1st, 2019. So I'm creating a SAS data set, and then we're going to print it really quickly. So I'll run this code, and on the results window, we see that my start date was day 21,581. Now, if you're like me, you're never going to remember what day 21,581 is. And if I tell you that my start date was March 1st, 2019, are you going to quickly remember that February had 28 days that year? Or was it 29? I don't know. SAS knows when the leap years are. But that brings me to the next topic that we want to make sure we understand for this video, which is formats. And so the format, which you can look in the show notes about all sorts of different formats that you can apply on your data, which go for date values, date time values. They're really just a way for presenting the data. So it can show dates in any kind of notation, like our date here is showing with a month, a day digits, the month character spelled out, and then the full year. And so you have formats that can make this show as long or as short as you want it to be. So I'm going to create this data set one more time, or I'll modify this particular data step, where we're going to add a format statement. And I want to format my start date variable to be a month year variable. And I'm choosing month year because we're going to be working with a lot of month years later in this video. So we'll go MONYY 7 dot. And this is just the structure that we need to have for our format. And this is telling SAS I want the month and the year, and it's going to be a length of 7. So this will end up showing up as 7 characters when we go and print our data. So when I run this again, we end up seeing that my start date was February 2019. So now you don't have to remember what 21,500 I think it was 81 was. So we see February 19. And you'll notice here that it doesn't say February 1st, 2019. It's because we chose a month year format. So it's going to kind of lose that granularity where we don't have the day anymore. So now that we've covered those two basics of what is a SAS date, it's the number of days since January 1st, 1960, and what is a format, and it's a way for you to help see the data, I want to get into our actual example where we can create our transaction data. To get started, I'm going to pull over some example code just so that we can get into things pretty quickly. Okay, so now we've got a data set where we're creating our fake data to emulate these transactions that happened over a course of several months. And just to quickly go over, because you can recreate this data set at home, I'm creating a data set called My Transactions. I'm creating a date variable called purchase date. It has the format date9 on it. Date9 actually looks like what we used at the top of our program for February 1st, 2019. So it shows up with a similar structure. We'll see the month, day, and the year. And then we're doing a do loop. Our do loop is just going to create 100 observations in our data, and I just want this to quickly create some fake data for us. So what's happening is we've got purchase date, which is going to be January 1st, 2025, plus some random number. So I'm using the randUni function, which is going to create a random number between 0 and 1, following the uniform distribution. I'll multiply that by 91 so that we can get a day somewhere between 1 and 90 days from January 1st, 2025. And we want to make sure that's an integer, which is using the for function, just so that we have whole days, not day 21,581.5. So we're going to create our purchase date, which is just randomly assigned. I do have a seed value here, so you can recreate this at home. This is used for reproducibility. And then I'm going to perform a similar function for our amount. So we have our amount function, which is going to create any value kind of randomly assigned between 0 and 251. So we're going to end up seeing a data set here that has 100 observations with a purchase date variable and an amount variable. I do have this drop statement here at the end because I'm dropping the I, which is part of the do loop. So if I go ahead and I run this code, we'll see here, just checking the log really quick, that we do have a data set called my transactions. It has 100 observations and 2 variables. And we can look at the output here really quick to see that purchase date does show up as a date variable. It's because we added that date format on it. And again, we've got that day, month, and year granularity, and then the amount variable, which is any one of those numbers between 0 and 250. So this is our data that we're going to work with over the next couple of minutes to summarize and say how much money did I spend every month. If I quickly sort on this data set, we'll see that there is data for January 1st, which there's a couple of observations that happened on January 1st. I went on a little shopping spree that day. And then we go all the way down to the bottom of the data set, and we've got March 30th is the last day of our data. So we know that we're going to be grabbing monthly totals for January, February, and March. Okay, so now that we know what our data looks like and all the transactions that we've made over the last couple of months, we're going to do our first pass using PROC SQL to summarize our data by month. Again, we want to answer the question, how much money did I spend every month from January to March? So I'll get started by writing my PROC SQL step. We will create a new data step, or a new data set, that is. We're going to call this monthly sum, just for example. And then, oops, I accidentally hit autocomplete. And we will select our purchase date variable, and we want to sum by amount, or sum amount, and we're going to call this monthly sum as well. So I have a data set called monthly sum with a variable called monthly sum in it. And we will say this is from our my transactions data set. So I'll just quickly control paste that. And then we need a group by statement here because we are grouping it by the purchase date. And we want that purchase date to have a monthly aggregation. So if you remember right at the very beginning, the first example that I gave you with my start date had the format with MONYY7, and that showed us that February 2019. We lost that day granularity. So for purchase date right here, when we created our data set, it had a day granularity to it. We saw I had all those purchases on January 1st all the way through March 30th. And so I want to add a format to my purchase date, and we're going to say purchase date format equals MONYY7. We're going to just continue with that same month format just so we can see it spelled out with the same number of characters. I have a little syntax error here, so I'll add my semicolon. One of my favorite pieces of programming in SAS is always having that semicolon. But we will run this PROC SQL, and I expect this to have 3 rows in it, right? We want a row for January, a row for February, and a row for March with that sum of how much I spent every month. So when I click run, and I'm highlighting just that one section so we see only that one table. I'm looking at the log right now, and it looks a little fishy because right now it says that there are 63 rows and 2 columns. So let's just look at our output data real quick. And that's curious, right? I look at this and I'm saying every single row has January 2025 written on it, but there's different sums for every row. And we have 63 rows in our data. And this right here is why I wanted to share this debugging with you guys, because I have spent too much time looking at my code editor, just scratching my head saying, this looks like this should all be condensed into a single row. I grouped it by purchase date. I'm trying to sum by purchase date. I'm expecting 3 rows. They all look identical. What's going on? And that's where we'll get into a couple of these troubleshooting or a couple of different options that you can take when you're trying to write this code. And I'm going to say that right now it's the format that is on your date, but under the hood, that purchase date variable is just the same number that it was before. It's January 1st, it's January 3rd, it's February 5th, right? So we've got all of this date granularity underneath it, and the format is what's showing you it's February 2025. So I have 63 rows in this data set because there are actually 63 unique days of data in our base data set. Remember, it's not 100. Initially we had 100 rows of data. And it's down to 63 because some days had multiple observations. So on January 1st, actually, for example, so this was our first row in the data, if you remember, our data set showed I had several purchases on January 1st, 2025. And now there's one that has a sum of 704. Now our data only allowed me to make purchases up to $250. So it did sum something. It's just by day, not by month. So I want to get into those couple of examples of what could you do so that your data set is actually summing the data by month when you're looking at the data that shows you the date, purchase date is a month-year variable. The first option that I want to show you is going to be converting your date variable into a character variable. And so I'm going to copy just a quick data set because you don't need to watch me type all of this out, so that we can see what this looks like in the code. Okay, I have added to my program file the new data set that I want to create, and it's creating a character variable of our date, our purchase date variable. Up here at the top was the original PROC SQL that we wrote with purchase date and our format that gave us all those 63 rows. Now I'm creating a data step for a new data set called transactions formatted, where I'm entering in my transactions data set. I'm creating a new variable here called purchase date month year, and I'm using the put function, which is going to convert my purchase date variable, which is a number, into a character variable with the month 7 format. So I'm going to run this real quick so that you guys can see what this data set looks like and see what shows up in our kind of the metadata about it. We see the original purchase date has that calendar icon. It's still just that calendar date. Amount is a number, and then on purchase date month year, we see that little A symbol, which is that it is a character data. So now we have character data, which shows Jan 2025, February 2025, March 2025. So now I have a character data that is really just a text string. So we can run a very similar PROC SQL to what we did before, where we're going to select our purchase date, but instead of purchase date with a format on it, we're going to select that newly created character variable. So we're doing purchase date month year. We're going to sum by amount again, and we're going to enter in our new data set, this transaction formatted option 1, because I'm going to show you multiple options, and group it again by month year. So when I run this particular code, well, now first, I want to go back to the log. Yes, you just got a quick sneak peek because we went to the results window really quick, but I like to check the log first, and we'll see that we did create this new table, amount by month, option 1, created with 3 rows and 2 columns. Now that's exactly what we were expecting, right? We expected a row for January, February, and March. So now we can look at my output data set, and it's got February, January, and March in there. Looks great. This is exactly what we wanted. Now you might added like a sort feature in here because it's showing up as February 1st, January, and then March. And so, you can kind of play with your output a little bit more, but this has accomplished what we wanted to do. We now know I spent $4,945 in February of 2025. So you can answer the question we set out for. Now, I want to go over a couple of different options with you guys because depending on your needs or your customer's needs, you might not want a character variable in your data. You wanted this to be on a numeric variable. So I actually am going to copy this exact same step and we're going to create option 2. And option 2 is going to have our purchase date as a numeric variable still, but we will kind of lose that day granularity to it. So instead of the put function, we're going to actually wrap this in an input function. So we're going to input put. So the put is kind of nested inside. So it's first creating the character variable for February 2025. We're going to put the input function around it and put that same format on it. And let me add my 7 here. And so now I've got transactions formatted. Option 2 is creating this new data set with the month year variable as a number. And I will change out these values because we just copied it all on down. I want to first run this data set so you can see what our new variable looks like. And oh my goodness, we got purchase date, month, year. It's got all of these numbers, 23,742. What does this mean? It means absolutely nothing to me. So actually I want to add just a format just for our own visual purposes because that is a little bit hard to read and we're just getting all nice and comfy cozy with formats right now. So we got MONYY7. So again, it did convert it to this number of days since January 1st, 1960, but we do want to see that that's February, January, and March. And it looks like I have an error. I did not put the date variable. I just said throw a format out there willy-nilly, but we want to actually format my variable. So this is the fun part of programming, where I will copy my variable. Okay, we've got, now I'm formatting purchase date. We'll rerun this and look at the data set again. Go to the output data tab. And now it has everything is formatted as January 1st, February, or no day, just January, February, March. And so now we can use this purchase date, month, year variable, which is a numeric variable in our PROC SQL step. So because I've just copied kind of the same code, we're creating the same variable names, all of the rest of my PROC SQL can kind of flow through from the first example. And when I go to run this, we get the output here that shows purchase date, month, year. We've got January, February, March, and the monthly amount is displayed. And now you'll notice here that actually it does show January 2025 first. It is going kind of in that numeric order. So it is kind of automatically ordered for us. But again, you can always sort your output by whatever you need to, so that it fits your needs. So this is one approach that you can, if you didn't want character data to group by, you can convert this to numeric data. Now, I want to just show you real quick, if I were to change this format from MONYY7 to just date 9, because what we did was we took our purchase date, we converted it to a character, and then we converted it back to a number. I want to show you what happened to that variable, just to make sure that you understand when you're making that change, that it actually is saying that the purchase date is the first of the month. So it did choose to just January 2025. When I try to put it back that day granularity, it's going to make everything the same day. And that's okay if you're working with just the format and you don't need that kind of granularity, but it is just something to note if you're trying to convert back to that number. You no longer have January 23rd, it's just January 1st. And so that allows everything to kind of work seamlessly together. Now, if you don't like SAS kind of taking the executive role and making everything January 1st, you have other functions available to you that you can kind of force or decide what you want SAS to create as that new variable if you want it to be numeric. So I'll copy this data set again, and we're going to make a small modification where we're going to use the INTNX function, the INTNX. And we really do like this autocomplete that SAS has for us. So we're going to kind of step through what's in the docs showing up on the screen. So first we want to define our interval, which is going to be months. We want a monthly interval. The start from is going to be our purchase date variable. We want to increment. We don't want to increment. We want to just keep it the same month. And the alignment can be beginning, middle, end. And this is where you can kind of use this function to take kind of more of the control of, do you want it all to say January 1st? Do you want it to be January 15th? Maybe it's the last day of the month, or keep it the same. So I'm just going to say I want to make this the beginning. Okay, and so we will rerun this data set. I'm going to call it option 3. And we can look at our output data again, and it does have the date format on it, so we do have that same day granularity. So again, I just used a different function. It does all show that everything is on the 1st of the month. But I just wanted to show you quickly another option that you have available when you're working with that date variable. And when we go to push this through our PROC SQL, we will create our option 3 data set based on our newly created data set, and we can run this, and we should get the same answer, where we get a sum for January, February, and March. And so these are all examples with PROC SQL. And I used PROC SQL because this is what myself and a lot of my colleagues were using when I was working on some of my customer implementations. And that's where we really got stuck with that initial example of why were there so many rows when my format was there. And so there's a couple of different options that you can prep your data to be able to group it by date effectively. Now, I do want to show you a different procedure step, PROC MEANS, that does this actually very seamlessly. And if it works for your data set and you can do all the other calculations that you need, PROC MEANS is going to be a great approach for you to take. So we'll type out this PROC MEANS step. And we are going to use our initial data set, my transactions. Our initial data set, my transactions, which had purchase date on it. We want the variable that we're going to be doing the PROC MEANS kind of analysis on is going to be our amount variable. We want to do the class statement, so it's going to be class of purchase date. I'm going to add a format line. So we still need a format because purchase date still had all the day granularity to it. So format, we're going to say purchase date MONYY7, and run this code. So let's give that a run. My mistake, guys. I forgot to add in the output data set that I wanted. So by default, PROC MEANS is going to give you the mean, standard deviation, min, and maximum. But if you remember, we want a sum. So I'm actually going to create my output out data set, and we want to call this option 4. Out equals option 4, and I'm going to say sum is equal to amount. And we'll run that code. We'll look at our output data set, which now shows us in our output data set, we've got January, February, and March, and we have that sum amount with it on every single row. So if you remember this purchase date amount, it had all that detailed data, and just using that format statement, it was able to recognize, hey, we're gonna take it back and just look at January, February, and March. So none of this extra variable creation needed to happen like we were doing above with the put function and the INTNX function. So PROC MEANS was a very quick and simple approach for us to throw a format on there. SAS recognized, hey, we want to do our summarizing based on this format, and it gave us the output that we wanted. And so that kind of concludes everything that I wanted to show you guys today, with a couple of approaches that you can take using your data. And I do encourage you to think about the different use cases that you have when you're working with the data, because sometimes PROC SQL makes more sense if you're doing a whole bunch of calculations, if you need to change your group by, you need some nested queries. So I wanted to give you a couple of different approaches today that if you got to the point where you're scratching your head and said my summarization step did not work, you've got something that you can get started with. All right, and there you have it, guys. That's our whole video on summarizing your data by dates and using formats. We covered a lot today. We looked at SAS dates, SAS formats, a couple of different SAS functions, and SAS procedures. Golly, that was a whole lot. So if you have any questions, please be sure to drop them below. And if you have any more interest in reading about these ideas or looking at other papers, there's information in the show notes, and you can see the code that we generated on screen today. I'd also love it if you dropped a comment letting me know which version you learned today, which one you're familiar with, or a new approach. I'd always love to learn from my listeners too. So if you liked today's video, please be sure to hit like, and if you'd like more SAS content, be sure to hit subscribe. See you next time.